In the suburbs of Kansas City, Missouri, some routines become more than habit. They become lifeline. For Travis Kelce, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, the drive from his home to the training facility had evolved into something he genuinely looked forward to. Not because of the destination, but because of one special stop along the way. Every morning at exactly 7:45, as Travis navigated his black Escalade down Maple Street, he would slow down near a small blue house with white shutters. There, without fail, a little girl with pigtails and the brightest smile in Missouri would be waiting by her front window. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, always wearing something red. Sometimes a Chiefs jersey that looked 3 sizes too big, sometimes just a red sweater, but always something that showed her team spirit. The routine had started 6 months ago, completely by accident. Travis had been running late for practice, speeding down unfamiliar side streets to avoid construction on his usual route, when he caught sight of movement in his peripheral vision. A tiny figure was jumping up and down behind a window, waving frantically at his recognizable vehicle. Without thinking, he had honked his horn twice and waved back. The smile that erupted on that little face was so pure, so genuinely joyful, that it stopped him in his track. From that day forward, Travis made sure to take Maple Street every single morning. Rain or shine, whether he was running early or cutting it close, he would always slow down for their daily exchange. The little girl, he had come to think of her as his morning sunshine, never disappointed. She was always there, always ready with that enthusiastic wave, always wearing red. Travis had mentioned her to his teammates during lunch breaks, describing how this simple interaction had become the best part of his morning routine. "Man, this kid has more energy at 8 a.m. than I have after 3 cups of coffee," he'd told tight end Blake Bell. "She's out there every single day, like she's been waiting for me specifically." His quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, had laughed and said, "Sounds like you've got yourself a loyal fan, Trav. Better not let her down." Travis took those words more seriously than Patrick probably intended. The daily wave had become a commitment, something he felt responsible for maintaining. On days when practice ran late and he didn't drive home the usual way, he would actually feel guilty, wondering if she had waited by her window for nothing. During the off-season, when his schedule was more flexible, Travis had even driven by the house just to maintain their routine. He told himself it was silly, but something about that little girl's unwavering enthusiasm reminded him why he loved football in the first place. Pure joy, the unconditional support, the belief that good things were possible. He had tried to learn more about her, subtly slowing down to catch glimpses of the house, but he never saw any adults around. Sometimes he wondered about her family, whether they knew about their morning ritual, whether they understood how much it meant to him. But he respected boundaries and privacy, content with their simple, innocent connection. The girl had even started varying her wave, sometimes making them dramatic and sweeping, other times quick and shy. Occasionally, she would hold up signs, crude drawings of football, or messages spelled out in crayon that said, "Go Chiefs," or "Travis, number 87. Travis had started taking pictures of these signs with his phone to show his teammate, who had begun following the story with genuine interest. "Your biggest fan," his brother Jason had teased during a phone call. "Better make sure you win every game this season. She's counting on you." Travis had laughed, but privately, he felt the weight of that responsibility. This little girl didn't know him personally, didn't know about his contract negotiation, media obligations, any of the complicated aspects of professional sports. To her, he was simply Travis Kelce, the football player who waved back, who noticed her, who made her morning special. That purity of connection was something he treasured in a world that often felt overly complex. Weather had never stopped their routine. Even during Kansas City's notoriously unpredictable spring storm, she would be there, sometimes pressing her face against rain-streaked glass, her breath fogging the window as she waved. On sunny days, she would sometimes open the window and wave more dramatically, her enthusiasm infectious, even through the barrier of his car window. Travis had started planning his morning schedule around their interaction, making sure he had enough time to slow down properly, to wave back with appropriate enthusiasm, sometimes even honking his horn in specific patterns that she seemed to recognize and remember. Their communication had evolved beyond simple ways. It had become a language of joy, consistency, and mutual recognition. The neighborhood itself was modest, working class, with small houses and well-maintained yards. Travis had grown up in a similar environment, and he appreciated the sense of community that seemed to emanate from these streets. Children played in yards, neighbors talked over fences, and there was a genuineness that sometimes felt missing from his more affluent circle. As the months passed, Travis realized that this daily interaction had become more than just a pleasant routine. It had become essential to his mental preparation for the day. The girl's enthusiasm was infectious, her consistency reassuring, her joy genuine. In a profession where criticism and pressure were constant, her unconditional excitement provided a necessary balance. But on this particular Tuesday morning in late September, as Travis turned onto Maple Street at exactly 7:45, something felt wrong immediately. The blue house with white shutters looked different somehow, though he couldn't immediately identify why. As he approached the familiar window, he slowed down as always, preparing for their daily exchange. The window was empty. Travis blinked, certain he had mistaken the time or perhaps was looking at the wrong house. But no. This was definitely the right place. The same blue paint, the same white shutters, the same small front yard with the red tricycle usually parked near the steps. But the window, their window, was completely empty. More unsettling than the absence was the stillness. Usually, even before he could see her clearly, he could detect movement, the anticipation of her presence. Today, there was nothing. The curtains were drawn differently, hanging limp and lifeless. The house itself seemed to emanate a strange quietness that made the hair on Travis's arms stand up. He sat in his idling Escalade for a full minute, staring at that empty window, waiting for her to appear. Maybe she was running late. Maybe she was sick. Maybe her family was traveling. But something deep in his stomach, some primal instinct he had learned to trust during years of reading defensive formations, told him this was different. Something was very, very wrong. Travis couldn't shake the feeling as he drove the remaining 3 miles to the training facility. The emptiness of that window haunted him throughout the morning practice, disrupting his usually laser-focused concentration. During catching drills, he found himself staring off toward the direction of Maple Street. During team meeting, his mind wandered to that little girl's inexplicable absence. "Kelce, you with us?" Coach Reed's voice cut through his distraction during film review. "Yeah, Coach. Sorry." Travis forced himself to focus on the defensive formations displayed on the screen, but the image of that empty window kept superimposing itself over the football footage. Patrick Mahomes noticed his unusual demeanor during lunch. "You're acting weird today, man. Everything okay?" "It's probably nothing," Travis said, picking at his salad. "You remember that little girl I told you about? The one who waves every morning? Your biggest fan?" "Yeah, what about her?" "She wasn't there today. First time in 6 months." Patrick raised an eyebrow. "Dude, kids get sick. Families go on vacation. You're overthinking this." But Travis couldn't accept that explanation. He had seen dedication in that little girl's routine that rivaled professional athletes. She had been there through thunderstorms, early snow, scorching summer heat. She had been there the Monday after Christmas, the day after her birthday party, when he could see deflated balloons through the window. She had been there every single day, until today. After practice, instead of heading home to his usual recovery routine, Travis found himself driving back toward Maple. He told himself he was just being cautious, checking on a young fan, making sure everything was okay. But as he turned onto the familiar street, that uncomfortable feeling in his stomach intensified. The blue house looked even more wrong in the afternoon light. The red tricycle was gone from the front yard. The curtains were not just drawn differently, they were drawn completely shut, blocking any view into or out of the front windows. Most unsettling, there was a stillness about the property that felt unnatural, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Travis parked across the street and studied the house for several minutes. No movement, no sound, no signs of life. The mailbox, which he now noticed for the first time, had several days' worth of mail stuffed into it, with more scattered on the ground beneath. The small front garden, which had always been meticulously maintained, showed signs of neglect. Wilted flowers, unwatered plants beginning to brown at the edges. Every rational part of his brain told him to drive away, to mind his own business, to assume there was a reasonable explanation. But the irrational part, The part that had helped him read countless defensive formations and make split-second decisions in crucial game moments, was screaming that something was seriously wrong. He thought about the girl's grandmother. He had seen an elderly woman a few times through the window, usually in the background, sometimes waving alongside the little girl. Was she okay? Had something happened to their family? The more Travis studied the house, the more convinced he became that this wasn't a simple vacation or illness. After sitting in his car for 20 minutes, Travis made a decision that would have seemed completely out of character to anyone who didn't understand the depth of his connection to this morning routine. He got out of his Escalade and walked across the street. The closer he got to the house, the more obvious the signs of abandonment became. The grass hadn't been cut in at least a week. Newspapers were piled up on the front step, some still in plastic bags, others scattered by wind and weather. A window on the side of the house that he had never noticed from the street was slightly cracked, with what looked like a piece of cardboard taped over part of it. Travis knocked on the front door, gently at first, then more firmly. "Hello? Anybody home?" He waited, listening for any sound from inside. Nothing. He walked around to the side of the house where he could see into the backyard. More concerning sign: a small vegetable garden that was clearly dying from lack of water, children's toys scattered and abandoned, a back door that was standing slightly ajar. The rational voice in his head was getting quieter, overwhelmed by genuine concern for the safety of the little girl who had become such an important part of his daily routine. Travis approached the back door and called out again, "Hello? This is Travis Kelce. I'm checking to make sure everyone's okay." Still no response, but now he could hear a faint sound that might have been a television or radio playing somewhere inside the house. The back door was definitely open, not just ajar, but actually swinging slightly in the afternoon breeze. Travis hesitated for a long moment, weighing the potential consequences of what he was considering. Entering someone's property without permission was serious, potentially illegal, but the accumulation of evidence, the abandoned mail, the neglected garden, the open door, the complete absence of the most reliable little person he had ever encountered, painted a picture that demanded action. "Hello? I'm coming in to check if everyone's safe," he called out loudly, giving anyone inside ample warning. He pushed the back door open wider and stepped into what appeared to be a small kitchen. The smell hit him immediately, not the smell of decay or danger, but the stale smell of a house closed up and unventilated for days. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink, some with food that had clearly been sitting there for a while. Empty food containers were scattered on the counter, mostly children's snacks and easy-to-prepare meals. Travis moved carefully through the kitchen into a small living room, continuing to call out warnings of his presence. The television was indeed on, playing an old movie with the volume turned low. Children's books and toys were scattered around, but again, everything had the feeling of having been abandoned rather than actively used. He climbed the narrow staircase to the second floor, his heart rate increasing with each step. The hallway was dark, with several doors leading to what he assumed were bedrooms and a bathroom. The first door was open, revealing an adult bedroom that looked like it hadn't been slept in for several days. The bed was made, but clothes were scattered around as if someone had packed quickly. The second door was closed. Travis knocked gently and called out before opening it. What he found made his heart stop. The room was clearly designed for a child. Pink walls, stuffed animals, a small bed with princess sheets. And in that bed, barely visible under a pile of blankets, was a small figure. The little girl from the window. His morning sunshine was there, but something was terribly wrong. She was awake, but barely responsive. Her eyes were open but unfocused, and when she saw Travis, she didn't seem surprised or afraid. She seemed relieved, as if she had been waiting for someone, anyone, to find her. "Hey there, sunshine," Travis said softly, approaching the bed slowly. "It's me, Travis, the guy you wave to every morning. Are you okay?" The little girl tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. Grandma went to sleep and won't wake up." Travis felt his blood run cold as the full scope of the situation became clear. This little girl had been alone in this house for days, possibly longer, taking care of herself. While dealing with what appeared to be a family emergency she was too young to understand or handle. But what he discovered next would make everything infinitely more complicated. Travis knelt beside the small bed, his mind racing as he tried to process what the little girl had just told him. "Honey, what's your name?" he asked gently, keeping his voice calm despite the panic building in his chest. "Lily," she whispered, her voice hoarse and weak. "Lily Mae Patterson." "Lily. That's a beautiful name. Can you tell me where your grandma is now?" Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she pointed toward what Travis assumed was another bedroom down the hall. "She's been sleeping for a long time. I tried to wake her up for breakfast, but she won't open her eyes. I think she's really tired." Travis felt his heart sink as he began to understand the gravity of the situation. This 8-year-old girl had been living alone with what was almost certainly her deceased grandmother for several days, not understanding what had happened, trying to take care of herself while waiting for the adult in her life to wake up. "Lily, I'm going to help you, okay? But first, I need you to stay right here while I check on your grandma. Can you do that for me?" She nodded weakly, and Travis could see that she was dehydrated and probably hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. The evidence was everywhere now that he knew what to look for. Empty cereal boxes, juice containers, evidence of a child trying to feed herself with whatever she could reach and prepare. Travis walked down the hall to the other bedroom, steeling himself for what he might find. The door was partially open, and the smell that emanated from the room confirmed his worst fears. An elderly woman, presumably Lily's grandmother, lay in bed, clearly having passed away several days earlier. The scene was peaceful but heartbreaking. She appeared to have died in her sleep, leaving Lily completely alone and unaware of what had happened. Travis immediately pulled out his phone and called 911, stepping back into the hallway to speak with the dispatch while keeping an eye on Lily's room. 911, what's your emergency? This is Travis Kelce. I'm at 412 Maple Street in Kansas City. I've found an elderly woman who appears to have passed away in her sleep, and there's a young child here who's been alone for several days. Sir, are you related to the residents? No, it's complicated. I know the child, and I was checking on them when I found this situation. The little girl needs immediate medical attention. She's dehydrated and has been trying to survive on her own. The dispatcher assured him that emergency services were on the way and instructed him to stay with the child. Travis returned to Lily's room, where she was now sitting up in bed, looking at him with a mixture of hope and confusion. "Lily, some people are coming to help us, okay? EMTs, those are like doctors, and they're going to make sure you're feeling better. Are you thirsty? Hungry?" She nodded eagerly. "I ate all the crackers and the juice boxes. I was saving the last apple for Grandma when she wakes up." Travis felt tears welling up in his eyes as he realized this brave little girl had been rationing food, still thinking about caring for her grandmother, even while struggling to survive herself. "You've been so strong, Lily, so brave, but you don't have to take care of everything by yourself anymore." While they waited for emergency services, Travis learned more about Lily's situation. Her grandmother, Eleanor Patterson, had been her sole caretaker since Lily was 3 years old. Her parents had died in a car accident, and Eleanor had taken her in without hesitation. They had been living in this house together for 5 years, developing their own routines and traditions. "Grandma always made me stand by the window to wave at you," Lily explained, her voice getting slightly stronger. "She said you were a good man because you always waved back, even when you were probably in a hurry. She said good people notice other people." The profundity of that statement hit Travis like a physical blow. Eleanor had been teaching Lily about kindness, about noticing others, about the importance of small gestures. Their morning ritual hadn't just been about football fandom. It had been about human connection, about teaching a young girl that there were good people in the world who would notice her. When the EMTs arrived, followed quickly by police and social workers, the scene became controlled chaos. Lily was examined and determined to be dehydrated, but otherwise physically okay, though she would need to be monitored for a few days. The coroner confirmed that Eleanor had passed away peacefully in her sleep, likely from a heart attack, approximately 4 days earlier. Travis found himself answering questions from police officers about how he had discovered the situation, explaining their morning routine and what had prompted him to investigate when Lily didn't appear at the window. The officers were initially skeptical about his story, but Lily confirmed every detail, describing how she looked forward to seeing the football man every morning and how Grandma had encouraged their ritual. Social worker Margaret Chen arrived to handle Lily's case, and Travis watched with growing concern as they discussed temporary placement options. Lily would need to go into the foster care system while they searched for any other living relative. The thought of this brave, sweet little girl be shuffled through an overburdened system made Travis's chest tighten with anxiety. "What happens to her now?" Travis asked Margaret privately, while Lily was being examined by the EMTs. We'll place her in emergency foster care while we search for family members. Eleanor Patterson was listed as her legal guardian, but we need to see if there are any other relatives who might be able to take her in. And if there aren't, Margaret's expression is kind but realistic. Then she'll become a ward of the state. We'll do our best to find her a good permanent placement, but the system is stretched thin. She might move between several homes before we find the right fit. Travis felt a protective instinct surge through him that he had never experienced before. This little girl, who had brought him joy every single morning for 6 months, who had been taught by her grandmother to notice and appreciate kindness, was about to be thrust into a system that might not be able to provide the stability and love she deserved. As they prepared to transport Lily to the hospital for observation, she looked around frantically for Travis. When she spotted him, she ran over despite the EMT's attempts to keep her calm. "Will you still drive by in the morning?" she asked, her small hand gripping his arm. "Even if I'm not here to wave." Travis knelt down to her eye level, fighting back tears. "Lily, I promise you that wherever you are, I'm going to make sure you're okay." That's a promise. But even as he made that promise, Travis knew that the foster care system moved slowly, that Lily could disappear into bureaucratic processes that might separate them permanently. The thought of never seeing her again, of not knowing if she was safe and loved, was unbearable. As the ambulance pulled away with Lily inside, Margaret Chen handed Travis her business card. "Mr. Kelce, I appreciate what you did today. You likely saved this child's life. If you'd like to stay informed about her case, within legal limits, please call me." Travis stared at the card, knowing that staying informed wouldn't be enough. Something much bigger was stirring in his heart, something that would require him to step far outside his comfort zone and fight battles he had never imagined fighting. But first, he had to figure out exactly what those battles would be, and whether he was prepared for the complicated, lengthy, and emotionally exhausting process that might be the only way to ensure Lily's future. 3 days after finding Lily, Travis couldn't focus on anything else. Football, which had been his entire world for over a decade, suddenly felt trivial compared to the image of that little girl asking if he would still drive by in the morning. He had called Margaret Chen twice daily for update, learning that Lily was physically recovering well, but struggling emotionally with her new temporary foster placement. "She's a resilient kid," Margaret had told him during their latest phone conversation, "but she's been through massive trauma. The family she's with now is good people, but they're dealing with 3 other foster children. Lily needs more individual attention than they can provide." Travis had researched extensively over the past few days, learning about the foster care system, adoption procedures, and the legal complexities of someone in his position trying to help. What he discovered was both encouraging and daunting. As a single man with financial stability and no criminal record, he wouldn't be automatically disqualified from fostering or adopting, but the process would be lengthy, invasive, and uncertain. More concerning was what he learned about Lily's specific situation. Social services had been unable to locate any living relatives willing or able to take her in. Eleanor Patterson had been her last biological connection, making Lily a true ward of the state. Without someone stepping forward to provide permanent placement, she would likely spend years moving between temporary homes. That realization made Travis's decision for him. On Thursday morning, instead of driving to practice, Travis drove to the Department of Children and Family Services downtown. He had spent the night talking to his agent, his financial advisor, and most importantly, his mother, who had listened to the entire story before saying simply, "Travis, that little girl was meant to be part of your life. Don't let bureaucracy stand in the way of doing what's right." Margaret Chen was surprised to see him in her office. "Mr. Kelce, I wasn't expecting you. Is this about Lily?" "I want to become her legal guardian," Travis said without preamble. "I want to adopt her." Margaret sat back in her chair, studying him carefully. "Mr. Kelce, I appreciate your concern for Lily, and what you did was heroic. But adoption is a massive commitment. It's not something you do out of gratitude or sympathy. It's forever. I understand that. I've thought about nothing else for 3 days. This isn't about sympathy or guilt. It's about the fact that I've formed a connection with this little girl and I have the resources and desire to provide her with the stable, loving home she deserved. Margaret spent the next hour explaining the process. Home studies, background checks, psychological evaluations, financial assessments, and a minimum 6-month fostering period before adoption could even be considered. The timeline was daunting, potentially 8 to 12 months of legal procedures, interviews, and evaluation. There's also the matter of your career, Margaret continued. Professional athletics involves extensive travel, irregular schedules, high-stress situations. The court will want to understand how you plan to provide consistent care for a traumatized 8-year-old. Travis had anticipated this concern. I've already spoken with my team management about adjusting my schedule. During the season, I can arrange for home games to be priority, and for away games, I can either bring her with me or arrange for qualified care. During the off-season, my schedule is completely flexible. But Margaret's next concern was more challenging. Mr. Kelce, there's also the matter of your public profile. Lily has already been through significant trauma. Adding the pressure and scrutiny of being connected to a celebrity could be overwhelming for a child. Travis hadn't fully considered this aspect, but he was determined to find solutions. I'll do whatever it takes to protect her privacy. I'll work with the team, with the NFL, with anyone necessary to ensure she can have a normal childhood. The conversation continued for 2 hours, with Margaret outlining every potential obstacle and Travis responding with determined problem-solving. Finally, Margaret leaned forward with a slight smile. Mr. Kelce, I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I can usually tell within the first few minutes whether someone is serious about adoption or just having an emotional response to a tragic situation. You've clearly thought this through, and your motivation seems genuine. But I need you to understand, this process will test every aspect of your life. Your finances, your relationships, your career, your mental health. Are you absolutely certain you're ready for that? Margaret, 3 days ago, the most important thing in my life was catching football. Today, the most important thing in my life is making sure Lily Patterson knows she's loved and safe. If that means dealing with bureaucracy, media scrutiny, and career adjustments, then that's what I'll do. Margaret began the paperwork that day, starting with Travis's formal application to become a licensed foster parent as the first step toward potential adoption. The initial requirements were extensive: criminal background checks, financial documentation, medical evaluations, personal references, and the scheduling of his first home study. While waiting for the bureaucratic wheels to begin turning, Travis faced his next major challenge: explaining his decision to his team, his fans, and the media. Chiefs management was initially concerned about potential distraction, but after meeting with Travis and understanding his commitment, they became supportive, even offering resources to help with the transition. The bigger challenge was controlling the narrative when news inevitably leaked to the media. Travis worked with his publicist to craft a statement that protected Lily's privacy while explaining his involvement. Travis Kelce is pursuing legal guardianship of a young fan who lost her family. He requests privacy for the child during this difficult transition and will not be discussing details publicly. But even with careful media management, the story gained national attention. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with fans praising Travis for his compassion and fellow athletes reaching out with support and advice. Several other professional athletes who had fostered or adopted children called to offer guidance about navigating the unique challenges of parenting in the public eye. The most meaningful support came from an unexpected source. Eleanor Patterson's elderly neighbors began reaching out through social services to vouch for Travis's character. They shared stories of how he had always been respectful during his morning drives through their neighborhood, how they had watched his daily interaction with Lily and recognized the genuine care involved. Mrs. Dorothy Williams, who lived next door to Eleanor and Lily, provided a particularly powerful testimony. Eleanor used to tell me about that football player who waved to Lily every morning. She said he was a good man because he never missed a day, even when it would have been easier to take a different route. She said that kind of consistency showed character. If Eleanor trusted him with her granddaughter's happiness every morning, I trust him with her future. 6 weeks into the process, Travis received approval for his first overnight visit with Lily. The foster family had reported that she frequently talked about her football friend and asked when she could see him again. Margaret Chen felt that a supervised visit would be beneficial for both of them. The reunion took place at a neutral location, a child-friendly restaurant where they could talk privately while still being in a public, safe environment. When Lily saw Travis walk in, her face lit up with the same pure joy he remembered from their morning routine. "You came back," she said simply, running to hug him. "I promised I would make sure you were okay," Travis replied, kneeling down to her level. "I keep my promises." Over lunch, Lily told him about her temporary foster family, her new school, and how she missed her grandmother but was trying to be brave like Grandma had taught her. She also shyly asked if Travis still drove down Maple Street in the morning. "Every single day," he told her honestly. "I stop at your old house and wave, just in case." Lily smiled at this, and Travis realized that their morning ritual had meant as much to her as it had to him. It wasn't just about football or fandom. It was about connection, consistency, and the comfort of knowing someone cared enough to show up. But as they prepared to part ways after the visit, both Travis and Margaret Chen knew that the hardest part of the journey was still ahead, convincing a family court judge that a professional athlete could provide the stable, long-term care that a traumatized little girl needed. The final court hearing took place on a cold February morning, 8 months after Travis had first walked into that empty house and found Lily. The intervening months had been a blur of home studies, psychological evaluations, legal paperwork, and carefully supervised visits that had gradually increased in frequency and duration. Travis sat in the courtroom wearing his best suit, flanked by his attorney and social worker Margaret Chen. Across the room sat the state's attorney, whose job it was to ensure that Lily's best interests were being served. Most importantly, Lily herself was there, now 9 years old and noticeably more confident than the frightened, dehydrated child he had found 8 months earlier. Judge Patricia Hernandez had been reviewing cases involving children for over 20 years, and she had seen every possible scenario of foster care and adoption. She had read Travis's file thoroughly, including the extensive documentation of his financial stability, character references, and the detailed reports from his months of supervised interaction with Lily. But before making her decision, she wanted to hear directly from both of them. "Mr. Kelce," Judge Hernandez began, "you've been through an extensive evaluation process. You've demonstrated financial stability, character, and commitment. But I want to understand, in your own words, why you believe adoption is the right choice for both you and Lily." Travis stood, glancing briefly at Lily, who nodded encouragingly. "Your Honor, 8 months ago, I thought I was just being a good neighbor by checking on a little girl who hadn't appeared at her window. What I discovered was that Lily and I had already formed a family bond without either of us realizing. She taught me that the most important part of my day wasn't scoring touchdowns or winning games. It was making sure one little person knew she was seen, valued, and cared for." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "I've learned over these months that being a parent isn't about having all the answers or being perfect. It's about showing up every day, being consistent, and putting someone else's needs before your own. Lily has made me a better person, and I believe I can provide her with the stability and love she deserves." Judge Hernandez then turned to Lily. "Lily, you've been through a lot of changes this year. Can you tell me how you feel about Mr. Kelce becoming your legal father?" Lily stood up in her chair, speaking with a clarity that impressed everyone in the room. "Judge Lady, Travis promised me he would make sure I was okay, and he kept his promise. He comes to see me every week, and he listens when I talk about Grandma, and he doesn't get mad when I'm sad. He taught me how to throw a football, but he also taught me how to cook pancakes and helped me with my homework." She looked directly at Travis before continuing, "Grandma always said that good people notice other people. Travis noticed me every morning, and now he notices me every day. I want him to be my dad because he makes me feel safe, and he never misses our morning wave." The morning wave had indeed continued throughout the adoption process. Every Saturday during their supervised visit, Travis would drive Lily past her old house on Maple Street, and they would both wave at the empty window, their way of honoring Eleanor's memory and maintaining the tradition that had brought them together. Judge Hernandez reviewed additional testimony from child psychologists who had evaluated both Travis and Lily, teachers who reported on Lily's improved academic performance and emotional stability, and character witnesses who spoke to Travis's commitment and growth as a caregiver. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the child psychologist who had worked with Lily throughout the process, provided crucial testimony. Lily has formed a healthy, secure attachment with Mr. Kelce. She demonstrates none of the anxiety or behavioral issues we often see in children who are placed with caregivers they don't trust. Her emotional recovery has been remarkable, and much of that can be attributed to the consistency and genuine care Mr. Kelce has provided. The most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Dorothy Williams, Eleanor Patterson's elderly neighbor, had asked to speak on behalf of the adoption. At 83 years old, she had traveled to the courthouse specifically to address the judge. "Your Honor, I watched Eleanor raise that little girl for 5 years. I saw how much love and care went into every day of Lily's life. Eleanor used to tell me about the football player who waved to Lily every morning, and she always said he was a good man because he never missed a day. Eleanor believed that consistency showed character." Mrs. Williams looked directly at Travis. "This young man kept his word to a dying woman he never met. He promised to take care of her granddaughter, and he's done exactly that. Eleanor would be proud that Lily found a father who understands the importance of showing up every day." After reviewing all the evidence and testimony, Judge Hernandez retired to consider her decision. The wait lasted only 30 minutes, but it felt like hours to Travis, who spent the time quietly talking with Lily about their plans for the weekend, trying to keep both of them calm. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell silent. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, and taking into account the best interests of the child, I hereby approve the petition for adoption. Mr. Travis Kelce is hereby granted full legal adoption of Lily Mae Patterson, effective immediately. The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration. Travis felt tears streaming down his face as Lily launched herself into his arms, hugging him tighter than she ever had before. "Does this mean I can call you Dad now?" she whispered in his ear. "If you want to," Travis whispered back, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to, Dad." 6 months later, on a crisp September morning, Travis and Lily established a new routine. Instead of driving past her old house on Maple Street, they had moved into a new home together, one with a big front window that faced the street. But every morning at 7:45, they stood by that window together. Lily, now 10 years old and wearing a Chiefs jersey with Kelce 87 on the back, would wave enthusiastically at the school bus that picked up the neighborhood children. Travis would stand behind her, his hand on her shoulder, waving too. "Dad," Lily said one morning as they watched the bus disappear around the corner, "do you think Grandma can see us?" "I think she can, sunshine. And I think she's proud of how brave and strong you've become." Lily smiled and leaned back against him. "I think she's happy that I found you. Or that you found me. We found each other," Travis corrected gently. That afternoon, Travis received a call from Margaret Chen. "Travis, I wanted to let you know, we've had 3 other professional athletes contact our office after hearing about your adoption. They're all interested in fostering or adopting children from our system." Travis smiled, watching Lily practice throwing a football in their backyard. "That's great, Margaret. Every kid deserves someone who will show up for them every day. You started something important, you know. Your story has inspired a lot of people to look beyond their own routines and really see the children who need help." After hanging up, Travis walked outside to join Lily. She ran to him, football in hand, grinning with the same pure joy he remembered from that first morning wave. "Dad, watch this!" She threw a perfect spiral that landed directly in his hands. "That's my girl," he said, throwing it back to her. "That's my daughter." As the sun set over Kansas City, Travis realized that finding Lily hadn't just saved her life. It had given his life a meaning he never knew he was missing. Their morning routine had evolved from a simple wave between strangers to the foundation of a family built on consistency, love, and the power of truly seeing another person. Sometimes the most important touchdowns happen off the field, and sometimes the greatest victories come not from what you catch, but from what you choose not to let go. That night, as Travis tucked Lily into bed in their new home, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Dad, tomorrow morning, should we still wave at the window?" "Every morning, sunshine. That's how our family started, and that's how we'll start every day, by noticing each other, by showing up, and by remembering that small gestures can change everything." "Promise?" "Promise. I keep my promise." And every morning thereafter, At exactly 7:45, a father and daughter stood by their window in Kansas City, waving at the world and at each other, proving that sometimes the most beautiful families are built one morning wave at a time.